What's up, y'all? I got my September reading log here. I'm going to talk about a bunch of comics. Honestly, not even that many. This is a pretty light month for me, so there's still a lot of books here, but I think it's under 15. So pretty light, pretty light. I started with this one because it's the smallest. This is Friday, Volume 3. I love this series. Leading up to this one, I was like all the way bought in. Marcos Martin's art is incredible. Ed Brubaker writes this. I'm not one of those guys that's like in the bag for Ed Brubaker, but like the artwork in this book is sick, dude. And this is no different. I actually was reading this one with my wife, this series. We were reading it together, and she read the third book before me, and she was mildly disappointed by it. I was not. I see what her complaints were because it does a little bit of time travel stuff, which can be really high risk, and like it feeling satisfying at the end. I still liked it. I think of the three books, this is probably one of the weaker ones. I liked the second one the best, if I had to pick. But I mean, the art's really good. The character we follow, whose name I can't remember now, but it's the girl. She's sick. Is her name Friday? Her name's probably Friday. Yikes. Yeah. This book's really good. The series is really good. You've probably been recommended it, and it's a great recommendation. Friday, the series, I really do want to give it a 5 out of 5, but I don't think I can call it a masterpiece. I think it does kind of drag and get a little weird at the end. I'll give it a 4 out of 5. Up next, we got Above Snakes. It's by Sean Lewis and Hayden Sherman. I loved this book. Loved it, loved it, loved it. Hayden Sherman's art, I have seen somewhere. I can't remember now. I had seen like little bits of it. But this style of his is incredible. And I feel like now when you see Hayden Sherman stuff, it doesn't look like this. Really? And I'm sure a part of that is the colorist. But like even just the big thick lines on some of the stuff that he does are so sick. Sean Lewis's writing, I think, is incredible. But I think the art is definitely the reason why I love this so much. Like, these bright colors. I mean, just look at this dude. He's out of his gourd, bro. This story follows this cowboy fellow who's looking for revenge out in the West. There's a crew called Above Snakes who killed his wife, I think. And he's like, I would have killed them because they killed my wife. He vows revenge. But it's a unique spin on that. So, like, you've probably heard something similar to that as a pitch 100 times. This book is not falling into that cliche. It has a lot more to say, way more interesting. It's also pretty self-aware in that it knows that's, like, a pretty common setup. This book, each, like, issue, right? So, like, this book collects 5 issues, I think. And each issue is so good standalone on its own, especially the first 3. That was really what stuck with me when I first read this. It, like, blew me away how strong each individual part is as a story. Because in comics, the idea is that's always how it goes. But I feel like a lot of times guys get so drawn into how long form their story is that it gets a little, lost in the shuffle of these individual issues. You got fucking, like, 20 pages to get something off, and you can't always fit everything you want in there. But this one does. It does. And it's like only the 5 issues, but it feels like this is the right length. I really enjoyed this. The last issue on this one, this is kind of a theme of this month that I think you're going to notice. Last issue of this one didn't totally land it for me, but I still think this one is a firm 4 out of 5. I think the first 3 stories in here are absolute bangers. And I think that the other ones are really good, even if they're not, like, perfect. Yeah, Above Snakes. I'm going to be reading more Sean Lewis. Is that his name, Sean Lewis? I got to make sure. Yeah, I'm going to read more Sean Lewis. I've already bought much more Hayden Sherman. I'm going to try and read Wasted Space. So, he's on my list. Up next, we have the very shiny Clobber Time, written and drawn by Steve Skroce? Scrose? Could be any of those. Couldn't tell you. There's a book about the Thing kind of traveling through time and space and beating the brakes off of whatever he runs into. There is this like overarching story, but I think it's the least interesting part of this book. I bought this because Steve Scroce is incredible. I really like him in We Stand on Guard. I've also read his Berserker like one shot, which was like fine, but his art is just sick. It's so clean, and every time whoever he does his colors with, I don't know if it's the same guy every time, but the colorist always very much understands the assignment with coloring his stuff. He does like really fun gore, if that makes sense. Like people are getting like you can see bones and like chunks of meat getting punched off people, but it's fun. It doesn't feel gross and bad and awful. See, like this is a great time. These guys are for sure dead, but it's fun watching them get there, you know? This story, it's pretty funny. I think this book is funny. It's definitely not taking itself that seriously, but the story is pretty convoluted, I gotta say. It's really out there, but I think he knows it while he's making it. I don't believe this was meant to be taken totally seriously. It's a little wordy, and I feel like when he's writing his own stuff, tends to be a little wordy. Again, I haven't read that much that he's written, but like it seems to fit. I don't know. It feels very pointed in that direction, I guess. Yeah, Clyburn time. It's a fun time. It's not going to change your life. I'm glad I have it. You know, I'd give it a 3 out of 5, but I don't want that to come off as like you shouldn't read. I think a 3 out of 5 is like a solid book, and that's definitely what this is. Up next, we have Batman Year One. Yes, this was the first time I had read this. I had it in my shelf for a month or two. I bought it a while ago just because I found a good deal on it. And I was like, well, I mean, it seems like everybody likes this one. I don't know. Frank Miller, David Mazzucchelli. It's sick, dude. This is widely considered one of the best Batman stories ever. I think it's probably my favorite Batman story. And I don't, this is going to not sound great, but just bear with me here. I don't usually read a lot of old comics. The tone doesn't translate to what I really enjoy in comic books a lot of the time. But this one was incredible. David Mazzucchelli is really good. Frank Miller's writing, I mean, he's so good. I haven't read that much Frank Miller before this. I did read Dark Knight Returns. I don't actually know if there's anything else, but I thought it was awesome. His art, I think this might be the recolored version. I definitely think it is, and I know that people want old comics to stay with old coloring, but I think this one's done really, really well. Mazzucchelli's art is sick. He's so good. Look at this Batman just kicking a tree down with his foot, just in like a full sweatsuit. He's just kicking it down. This is what I'm talking about, dude. It's sick. It's the two main characters are Batman, but it's year one, so it's like at the very beginning of him being Batman. So he doesn't know what he's doing. He's kind of figuring it out on the fly. And it also follows a lot of Commissioner Gordon, which I really, really liked here. I think the Gordon parts, I don't want to say my favorite because I do like the Bruce Wayne parts, but something like the way that Gordon's like monologue is written by Frank Miller is so old school detective that it just really, you know, it really just tickles me, you know? I just love me some old grizzled detective. I mean, look at this. This is exactly what I'm talking about. I want to read about guys just like this. Yeah, so Batman Year One, I think absolute banger. 5 out of 5. Would recommend. Best Batman story. Acts About Me. Up next, I got the BPRD Omnibus 2 by all of these people, mad people, that I did a real number on here. I folded the front of this pretty bad. This follows the organization that Hellboy works for. It's like a government organization that hunts paranormal things. Not hunts, but like deals with it. I think this series is so fun, dude. It's so fun. I think it really hits its stride. Like, I don't know. I don't want to say in this omnibus because I like the other one too. But these ones are all connected. It has to do with the Plague of Frogs. Really, I feel like front to back, like this has a lot of the Plague of Frogs stuff. I don't know how much more there is. I know there's like 9 or 10 of these omnibuses in this size. But it's so fun. I mean, it's like it's like a cop, not procedural, but it's like a cop show that I used to watch with my family, but instead of with regular people, they deal with ghosts and demons and monsters and all that. And it's so fun. The individual characters are so well written and so well defined in this book. they can split off in different directions, and I care about all of them equally, which is hard to do. Except for maybe Liz. She just doesn't do it for me. But the rest of them I'm all in on. And I'm for sure going to buy another one. I also watched that Mike Mignola documentary recently, so that made me be like, man, I got to get back on this. So I'm probably going to be buying a couple of the Hellboys as well. I just like the grounded feel of it. Like, even though all this crazy stuff is happening, the characters feel really grounded. And I will always appreciate that in these books. BPRD, I'll give it a... we'll give it a 4 out of 5. I like this one. I like the first one too. Probably like the next one. Up next, I got Sailor Twain by Mark Siegel, written and drawn by Mark Siegel. This book's kind of like a normal book size. It's kind of small. It's a big, thick guy, though. But I read through it pretty quick. It's about... What is this about? This is about a captain on a steamship that floats in the Hudson River a long time ago in the 1800s. Here we go. And it's like his running into, I don't know what you'd call this. He runs into a mermaid, and it's how it changes his life and affects it, and then he learns more stories that maybe he didn't just run into it, maybe there's more to it than that. Yada, yada, yada. I wanted to buy this book because I went on a run where all of a sudden I want to make a comic about a mermaid, but I'm kind of looking for the right tone of it, and I thought this might be a good example. And it is in some parts. The first third of this book I really liked, but the rest of it really didn't do it for me, if I'm being like completely honest. It's got this beautiful art style through all of it, where it's like kind of cartoony, but also all of this like grayscale, and there's great work on the backgrounds. These big shots of this like steamship that he's on that are beautiful, incredible, and that does a lot for it. It's really, I feel like, strongest in the beginning, and then as it goes on, I feel like some of these drawings get a little shaky. This book, like, respectfully, I'm not trying to bash anybody. Well, this is going to be a bash, pretty much. This book has some weird hands in it, dude. There are some pretty poorly drawn hands in this book. And in the second part especially, it really jumped out at me. Like, this is incredible, dude. This work is so good. But this is, like, not what's on my mind when I think of this book, because there's so many weird ones later on that just don't hold up. Yeah, maybe he just lost steam. I mean, this is a really long book to do, just like all by yourself. I can't even imagine. It has lots of fun, like, themes in it, especially at the beginning of, like, all this magic. And, like, what kind of magic does the mermaid have? How much magic is really in this world? Which is something I always love, like, the really grounded, like, the world's totally normal except for this one magic thing. But it kind of loses itself, I feel, as it goes along. And then by the end, I'm just reading it to get through it. Like, that last third, I really, really was not a fan of. So, this one's tough. I want to say, like, story 2 out of 5, but with the art, it probably squeaks it out to a 3, just because some of this black and white art is so good. Sailor Twain, I'm not sure I'm recommending it, but, you know, it's fine, I guess. Up next, we got The Strange Tales of Oscar Zahn by Tree Vuong. We'll give it a shot. That feels right. This was a total blind buy. This is like a hardcover version of a webcomic, which I don't read webcomics, really. I like my comics and books. That's just personal preference. I've seen lots of good stuff from there. So I always love it when a webcomic's brought to a book. Then it feels more accessible to me. Plus, this is a beautiful hardcover. I mean, look at that, man. Beautiful. It follows Oscar Zahn, who is a skeleton fellow, who is kind of like a hired on, not like private eye, but he's hired on to deal with ghosts and like undead and the paranormal. He works with this old lady who I still don't really understand their relationship just yet. They work together, but she doesn't like him very much. And she can see him, which he doesn't always, is not usually the case. People don't usually see him as a skeleton. He has this whole like disguise thing. This book is sick, dude. This book is an absolute banger. A banger masterpiece, might I even say. The artwork is incredible. The tone of the story is this kind of like melancholy, but still kind of sweet. Like tone to it as this guy is going through and dealing with these ghosts. It's like has a real love showed towards the ghost and towards the undead. This guy is not here to like punch him up and kill him. It's like in order to save these ghosts, you have to like solve their issue, right? And kind of meet them where they're at their core. And he is so kind and so sweet and so like charming for a little skeleton man. It really does so much for this book. He also has this, I guess I'm burying the lead. Also definitely has this octopus demon attached to him, haunting him. But that's not really the point. He's working on that. He's working on it, and it really is Oscar just going ghost to ghost and kind of figuring out its deal, helping out the ghosts, moving on to the next one, which I've grown to really like. That as a story format where it's like a group of short stories. These are usually split into. This first one's a short one at the top, which we love, just to kind of get you into it. Then the other ones are like 3 to 4 part stories of Oscar Zahn. I really loved this book. I don't want to show too much. You guys should buy this book. It is honestly, it is some like I don't want to say my favorite book this month because there's another one on here that I really, really enjoyed. But I enjoy them for similar reasons, man. The stakes are kind of grounded. He's not trying to like fight the devil and like save the universe. It's like really case by case personal stories with these ghosts. And I think it's beautiful for that. If any of that sounds appealing to you, then you're going to love this book. Plus, it's not too expensive. It's a beautiful book. It's a little bit shorter than like your typical comic books, but also a little bit more like square. It's a funky size. But I would recommend this to anyone. Strange Tales of Oscar Zahn is a 5 out of 5. Absolute banger masterpiece. Up next, we got Universe by Albert Montes. This one, it's going to be a weird size. I hope you can see most of it on here. Was another blind buy. I saw like the cover of this, I think on an Off My Shelves video. And I mean, just off the style and knowing that it's sci-fi and like this crazy anthology, I was like, I'm in, dude. I'm in. Just give me the book already. It's not very expensive either. This is written and drawn by Albert Montes. Don't know if I said that. And his art is beautiful. He's so good with the colors. He has these really stylized characters and worlds too. But I feel like the characters are a big highlight in this book because you don't have that much time with them. Each one has its own story that are like, they're loosely connected. It's definitely not like one flowing narrative, but it's definitely in the same world. I think this one also was a webcomic that got turned into had like a physical version. This book is sick. I don't want to say too much. Honestly, you should buy this book. This book is cool. If you like sci-fi kind of, I don't want to say Love, Death, and Robots because this is definitely a different tone, but like it's like a sci-fi take on that. This is the art style. If you're not in on this, I don't know what you want, bro. Like it doesn't get much better than this. It has real heart to it. The last story in this book is like a real gut wrencher, dude. It's so good. You'll feel lots of feelings while reading this book. You'll appreciate the characters. You'll feel like you know each of these people so intimately by the end of it. There's lots of interesting ideas. He does a real, like, it's a future like the Jetsons that these guys live in, but it's also through that, like, cynical tone of, like a dash of, but not post-apocalyptic, but what is that called? Dystopian. There's, like, a splash of dystopian in here, which is kind of, like, offset by all these bright colors that you're seeing through the story, which I think makes for, like, marries into this lovely tone that he dances on this whole way through this book. I saw a thing that said Albert Montes, I saw a thing. It's in the back of this book. He writes about how he did like single panel, like funny comics, like Far Side type joints before this, which is crazy to me because his storytelling is awesome. It's like, I can't believe that he was like nervous to try something like this. But I mean, this book is so good. This book is so good. You should absolutely buy it. Albert Montes, I love and appreciate all your work more than you know. This is probably also one of them I'd say was my favorite reads. There's three of them. There's like a big three this month. Universe by Albert Montes is one of them. It's a 5 out of 5. The fourth story in this book is kind of weird, but I think the other ones are so good that like you just have to read this. You really do. If you like any kind of sci-fi, you'll like this book, I believe. Had to zoom out a little for this bad boy. We got The Golden Age Book 2. Last month I did Book 1. I liked it. This book I liked a little bit less. Again, following the theme of like didn't love how this resolved. Like the ending of this book, the art is still incredible, right? I mean, I don't know if I said the names. Roxanne Morel and Cyril Pedrosa are definitely a dynamic duo. I like their style of storytelling for sure. However, the story actually itself really just did not land and the way that I really wanted it to. I thought this was also going to be like a grounded fantasy with like a little bit of magic, but I actually think there's no magic in this book. It's all weird metaphor stuff. But I think there's no magic, which, you know, maybe makes this a smarter book, but it sure made me like it less. I'll tell you that. It still follows the princess from the first book as she tries to like retake her throne. I think is her motivation, or like change the world but also be the queen. I don't know. There's some interesting stuff in this book, but ultimately I was unenthused, which is a shame because this artwork is incredible. I don't know anything else Cyril Pedrosa has worked on, but maybe if you've heard of some, if you could leave it in the comments or something. This is, I mean, it's beautiful, dude. It's beautiful. Great art. I would read a million books that were drawn this way. Unfortunately, didn't really do it for me. I don't really have that many other thoughts on this one. It was just kind of a bummer. I give this book a 3 out of 5, and I think that's because the art is doing a lot of heavy lifting. Up next, we got Colonel Weird and Little Andromeda. This is a library edition. Black Hammer book. I really don't know how I ending up buying Black Hammer books. Like, I liked the series, but I didn't, like, love it. But here I am. I own so many Black Hammer books. And a part of it is because they pull in a lot of really interesting artists, definitely, who are, like, doing all sorts of weird shit that they couldn't get away with anywhere else, I feel like. But Black Hammer is like a really open world for that. This one follows Colonel Weird and this kid, Andromeda, who is a younger version of another person in the Black Hammer universe. I'm not really going to get into it. If you know, you know. But I don't think it's like super necessary to know that. If you're coming into the story, it'll explain it. I think you're insane to read this book without reading the main Black Hammer series all the way through. But, you know, who am I to stop you, huh? It starts out, I think this is Ray Fox. Sorry, there's a million people working on this book. It's all written by Tate Brombal, who I really feel mixed on, and after this will continue to feel mixed, even though this is probably my favorite Tate Brombal book I've read so far. He just, I don't know, he doesn't totally do it for me. All sorts of great artists in here. Some names you'll probably recognize. We got Dave Stewart on colors, Jordi Belair on colors, Bill Crab, dang, that is a murderer's row, dude, of colorists. Andrea Sorrentino does a short bit. His bit's really, really good. Tyler Crook, I think, literally does one page. I'm not too familiar with any of these other artists before this book, but I thought they all did a great job. It starts out in this style, which, like, this is a great panel. You know, very watercolory. I, like, was going to call it messy, but I actually don't think it's messy. I think that it's, like, impressionistic, I guess is a better way to put it. Colonel Weird regrets life choices. He decides the only way to fix this is to take this kid on an It's a Wonderful Life journey where he will, like, learn to not do what he's destined to do. Colonel Weird's always a little bit like that. It's always like, I'm going to fight against fate, and then, like, the time traveling and then, like, dimension hopping or whatever he does kind of puts him back in his place. When I read this, I was like, this really feels like Tyler Crook's run that's in the World of Black Hammer books. Cosmogog, I think it's called. They're very similar. And, like, maybe that's just what Colonel Weird stories are supposed to be like, are like these... It's like It's a Wonderful Life, except you're left, instead of being like, wow, I appreciate my life, instead you go like, wow, this guy this is like really tough break for our boy Colonel Weird. I guess he just has to live like this now. The art is sick in this book. Lots of cool ideas, lots of cool stuff happening. I think it's beautiful. I get it if there are some styles in here that you don't like, but it's never sticking in one style long enough, even if you manage to not like one of these styles. I don't think that should keep you away from this. I have grown to really love books that have multiple artists doing their thing like this. So this is like right up my alley. I'm definitely biased towards this style of book, but I thought this one was pretty good. Black Hammer books don't really blow me away, except for that one with Skull Digger that I talked about last month. But this one's definitely worth it. And if you're going to buy it, you should buy it in this big hardcover format because the art is sick. I'll give this book... What do I think? I'll give this book 3 out of 5. Like a high 3 out of 5. Like almost a 4, but not quite. Up next, we got Low, Book 2. This is the, I don't know what they're called, deluxe edition, I guess. It's the Rick Remender hardcovers. They're all the same size. These big-ass books. This cover is nuts, dude. Written by Rick Remender, drawn by Greg Ticini, colored by Ian McKeag. Ian McKeag? Is that right? Dave McKeag. Who's Ian McKeag? I switched those up. By Dave McKeag. I read the first one. I don't know if it was last month or the month before. It took me forever to get my hands on this book. I kept buying it, and then people kept saying they didn't have it and getting refunded. Which, you know, first world problems, but still. And that book, the ending of that first, like, deluxe edition is so nuts that I was like, oh my god, I have to read the next book. And then I did, and then I was kind of let down, and maybe a part of that is I was waiting so long that I kept, like, building up what was going to happen in here. But the story didn't land for me, which, again, is, I guess, just the theme of the month. I feel like the resolution kind of felt like it came out of nowhere. I didn't feel like I had got enough answers. I didn't feel like I had spent enough time, which is crazy because the series is like 40-some issues. Like, how much more time, I guess, was I expecting to get? But I just didn't feel like that. I feel like this could have gone on for much longer. And maybe there's a reason it didn't. I don't know. I don't know the history of this book or like what was happening, what was coming out. I know Rick Remender can be iffy on his, like, you know, release dates and staying on schedule for comic books. It's not exactly his thing. But I thought the book was incredibly illustrated. Greg Ticini is nuts, dude. And although there are sometimes panels where you're like, is this squished? Did they like take a panel and just like distort it and weird? Like, why is everything so tall? But then she looks normal, but these guys kind of look squished. I don't know. It happens sometimes. It took me a while to get on board with his kind of style. But once you do, this thing just starts, like, flying, dude. Like, I couldn't put this book down, more so with the first one than the second one. This still follows the Kane family, and they're, like, for those of you that don't know, Low takes place, it's, like, post-apocalyptic, but all the people went underwater in order to survive, and then the mom has sent out... The mom, who's the main character in this book, is searching for another planet for us to inhabit while everybody else has given up. And so it follows her and her family. A tragedy happens in their family early on, and it's her kind of like picking up all the pieces of her children and, you know, trying to send everybody to this new planet, I guess. It's kind of a long story. There's a lot going on in this book. I'm in the bag for Rick Remender, so I just read whatever he puts out. And overall, that's done me a lot of good. This series kind of disappointed me, which is crazy because when I started reading it, I wasn't even that excited. I wasn't bought in. And then my boy Jordan read it, and he got all excited, and he was like, dude, you got to give this another go. And I did. Now I have my hopes built up just to be disappointed again. Disappointed is harsh, but it just didn't land. I mean, this is beautiful, dude. Greg Ticini is nuts with his artwork. He's so good. I don't really want to talk too more about this book. You know, it's a volume 2, so you're not going to start with this. I'd say it's worth a shot. I think the series is interesting. There's lots of good stuff. the journey is definitely worth it, even though the ending is not great. So I would give this Book of Low probably another one, 3 out of 5. It's like almost a 4, but the story's really weird. The art's incredible. Still good moments. I gotta stop talking about this. Low by Rick Remender. Now this book right here, this is a book. This has got to be my favorite read of the month. It is Frontier by Guilherme Singelin? Oof. Guillaume Singelin. I don't know, dude. This was from Magnetic Press. I'm almost certain this was translated because I don't think that Mr. Singelin speaks English. From what I see on his Instagram. This follows... Who does it follow? Our main character, who I can't think of her name now. I'm probably the worst guy in the world with character names. Jisoo is a scientist. This is like... it's futuristic, but it's kind of near future. People are exploring space. There's multiple planets that we're stationed on, but it's been taken over by all these corporations, right? So all the wonder of space is kind of gone, and now it's, inhabited by all these people who are just doing these jobs, right? Essentially working the mines, but in space. It follows Jisoo, who is like a scientist who is in charge of one of the first like successful probes. And then the probe that she designs is bought out by some evil corporation. And so then she carries on working for these people under contract. And it kind of follows her getting out of that lull that is caused by that. This story is so, like, one of my favorite things is when you get a story with grounded stakes. The universe is not going to be blown up. It's not going to be the end of all things. It's like grounded stakes, real characters with like strong goals and wants. And that's what this is. It's also beautiful. This artwork is nuts, dude. And it's all drawn and written by the same guy. It's all not watercolors. I'm not going to say that. I don't know what it is. It's some kind of paint, for sure. And it's beautiful. He illustrates these worlds full of color. It's in this chibi style, which usually doesn't do it for me, but I think really kind of brightens up this, and otherwise... Well, it's not depressing. The situation is grim at the beginning of this book, right? But everything is beautiful, which kind of undercuts that tone. But it also makes it even more sad. It's like, damn, we have all this beautiful shit, and we can't have it because of these greedy bastards. Which is kind of at the heart of the story. There are 2 other characters that we follow that we meet a little bit later. I don't want to say too much. I think everybody should buy this book. It is a sci-fi adventure that is like very wholesome, and it's very like kind. Like this book has such good-hearted goals and like messages, I feel like, of what it's trying to say through this like kind of intense sci-fi setup, that it's just like a journey that I don't want to stop. Like I started reading this and I was like, surely I can't read this all at once. Like functionally in my life, I cannot be sitting down and reading this many pages in a row. But I couldn't put it down. It's so well written. The characters are so whole. You know what I mean? Like just all parts of them have been considered. You get to see them grow over like a pretty good amount of time over this book. There's a few little time jumps. They go on really long journeys. It's space. So, some of the stuff just takes time. And you're with them for all of it. This book is wonderful. I think I have to say this was my favorite book. This was the top of the big 3. I got this off blind buy after OmniBuddy, a YouTube channel, OmniBuddy, said this was his sci-fi book of the year. And I was like, that's kind of nuts to call out best book of the year, or best sci-fi book of the year in August. This guy's crazy. But I think he's right. I think that this is like a brand of sci-fi that I'm not really used to. Which I think also makes this really refreshing. Like, there is action in it, but it's so focused on just the hopes and dreams of these characters and, like, their relationship to those and how the world is, like, putting obstacles in front of them, or how it feels that way. But then what they can do to actually enjoy the lives they live, it's beautiful. It's so beautiful. It is, like, my favorite version of the book where friendship is everyone's superpower. But it's not corny like that. I promise. This just made me feel a lot of feelings. I felt very warm and fuzzy in my heart after reading this book. And I hope that you do too, because I hope you get this book. This hardcover version is sick. I don't know how available it is. I bought it off of Kickstarter. But if this is available in any format, you should get it. But the hardcover especially is really nice. Lots of extra goodies in the back. Frontier, the best book I read this month. And I think that's going to be my last one. So thank you guys so much for watching this. If you have any good comic books that you read, I would really appreciate it if you left it in the comments. I'm always looking for more books to read. You know, I bought a big stack of books this week. So there's going to be a lot more new ones for next month's reading log. Take it easy, y'all.